Welcome everyone to the keynote inspiration and Q&A with Jeff Orlowski. My name is Alexa Gwyn and I'm a member of the Teen Leadership Council here at LookUp. One of the many reasons why a lot of you are here today is because of the amazing documentary, The Social Dilemma. Not only for any of you who haven't had the opportunity to see the film, The Social Dilemma brings to light a lot of the impacts that social media has on society. Not only did Jeff direct and produce this incredible film, but he is also the director, producer, and cinematographer of the award-winning documentaries Chasing Ice and Chasing Coral. Jeff is a role model and a hero for many young people like myself, and today we have the pleasure of hearing him speak about his inspirations and his journey on becoming a social and environmental activist. After he's done, please stick around to hear from 6 social innovators about their 90 for 90 action pitches. But for right now, please welcome Jeff Orlowski.
Thank you so much, Alexa. And the timing of this is so funny. This green wall right behind me just turned its motors on to run the water through. I'm gonna see if I can kill that for the time being for sound. But it's so great to be here. Thank you, Alexa and team, for having me. I was asked to speak a little bit to my background and kind of the history that got me into here and into the type of work that we've been doing with our team. And it's something that's been just really exciting and inspiring for us as a team to be able to dedicate our time and effort and attention on. I wanted to just give you a bit of my background and kind of the evolution of how we got to do this work. I'm from New York originally, from Staten Island, and I ended up going to Stanford for college, which was just an amazing experience to be able to be there during this era where technology was really just starting to be born in a really, really big way. It was the birth of the iPhone was soon after that point in time. And my history, kind of coming straight out of college, I had this amazing opportunity to go to Iceland on a trip with a National Geographic photographer. I often think about, like, what are the skills that you're developing throughout high school, throughout college, the skills that you're focusing on that you want to leverage into a career or a path or trajectory. And for me, that skill at the time was photography. Like, I felt like photography and the camera was my superpower. I grew up with a darkroom at my house, so this is in a much earlier era where before digital cameras, before digital technology like this, I grew up learning how to do black and white photography. I spent hours and hours and hours on end in the darkroom working to develop and print photographs. And that was the superpower that gave me the ability and the access to work with this really amazing photographer named James Baylog. And life takes you down many unknown paths and unknown trajectories. During my senior year in college, I was able to go to Iceland and go on these amazing adventures to photograph changing glaciers. And that was really the big core of what James was focusing on, the Nat Geo photographer that I got to work with. It was really something where I realized in working with him that he was trying to apply his talents and his skills as a photographer to a big social cause. And that was the sort of the light bulb for me, was watching that firsthand from him, where he could have done anything with his photography. He could have done any type and style of photography, but he was really dedicated to documenting how our planet was changing. In his case, he was really interested in the boundary between humans and nature. And that was a theme that was really, really common in his work. We think of humans as separate from nature, yet we are just another animal on this planet, and we are part of nature in a really profound and deep way. And that's been something that's been a huge inspiration for me, recognizing that, wait a second, if we are hoping to have human civilization continue on this planet, we're going to have to think and revisit our relationship with how we interact with the natural environment in a different way. So that was a big focus of James's work. And that led us down this path of making Chasing Ice. And then it continued down the path of making Chasing Coral, continuing to document our changing landscape through these stories. How do you reveal these invisible landscapes and make them accessible and interesting? And that's what brought us to the social dilemma. So I just wanted to talk a bit about the social dilemma and how it ties up with LookUp Live and all of you here today and the work that you're thinking through. Um, One of the big realizations for me came from one of our subjects while we were making the social dilemma in the very early days. And he said that this technology that we're interacting with on a daily basis, it is a climate change of culture that's happening to our society. That slowly and invisibly underneath our noses, we interact with, I don't even know where my phone is right now, actually. I was gonna hold it up, like we interact with these devices and these phones on a daily basis, and they are invisibly shifting and shaping the way we see and understand the world. There's a line in the film, how do you wake up from the matrix if you don't even know that you're in the matrix? And have some of you, Alexa, Tori, have you seen the Matrix? I'm just curious, like this is a film that was like instrumental in my childhood, but Tori, you have, okay, I'm putting that on your homework list to watch this film because it really is this like mind altering tone of um, like part of the premise within that film is there's this reality that we're living in that we don't even realize the level of what we're experiencing, right? And I think that's the analogy that we're trying to bring to life with the social dilemma. That little do we know, we are all living in this kind of engineered world that we don't even get to see the big picture on because we're participants in it. We're plugged into the system. This is something that has been the biggest realization for me while working on the social dilemma. And 2 years ago, I removed myself completely from all social media. I was for me, it was Facebook. That was the thing that I was addicted to. I was just a super heavy user, especially during the last election, where it had figured out everything that was working on me. And just to talk about like what exactly is going on. So the social dilemma, we really look at the social media and search engine apps, the platforms that in many cases we don't pay for them. So Facebook and Twitter, but also YouTube and Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok. These types of platforms, how do they make their money? Right? We're not paying for them. We don't spend money if we use TikTok or Instagram or Snapchat. It doesn't cost us anything financially. But how are they worth hundreds of billions of dollars, if not trillions of dollars? Right? There's a huge gap. And you have to ask yourself, like, how could we not be spending any money, yet it's the richest industry in the history of money, right? What's causing that? So they're making their money through people who are willing to spend money to manipulate and to influence and to persuade the general public. What is for sale is our eyeballs, right? The amount of time that we spend on these platforms is how they make their revenue. And these algorithms can really figure out very precisely who's using it. Each of us is basically just a little node in the system. I could sort of picture it in this massive, infinite, three-dimensional black box space. I picture these little dots, and Alexa has a dot, and Tori has a dot, and Jack has a dot, and I have a dot. And the algorithms are trying to figure out how do we get each of these little dots to spend more time on the platform, and how can we show more ads to each of these little nodes in the system. And part of it is, hey, if you have more friends, we can make more money. If you spend more time, we can make more money. So if Alexa makes a post and 10 people see it, there are 10 potential people who we can make money off of. But if Alexa has 1,000 friends, it's 100 times more opportunities for us to make money off the system. So the entire, this like three-dimensional nodal network that we live in, that our digital selves live in, that it exists on these servers, on these computers that we can't see or get access to. This exists at Facebook, it exists at TikTok, it exists at Instagram, at Snapchat. Each of them is trying to figure out how do we get more people to spend more time on these platforms to make more money. The ideal scenario, if I was the algorithm at TikTok, the ideal scenario is that each and every one of you is spending 24/7 on that platform. The ideal scenario is that you're on your laptop and your iPad on your iPhone at the same time, because now I could triple the amount of money that is being made. And that's what the algorithms are in many ways optimizing for. They're not optimizing for your quality of life. They're not optimizing for what you're hoping to pursue in life. They're not optimizing for meaningful, deep friendships and relationships. They're optimizing for likes. That's the unit of measure that they're counting. Likes and clicks, and how many times something has been shared, and how much money are we making through a particular platform. So this was the big realization for me in working on this particular project, right? Is that I grew up in an era before smartphones. I remember my high school days where I could play outside with friends. I mean, my elementary school and middle school was like a lot of time outside. And where I grew up in New York, my family, we would go upstate to go camping every summer. And that was a huge, like, foundational experience for me, being in nature and spending time in nature and getting away from just kind of a lived experience inside our walls with our screens and our devices. Now, things have obviously gotten really, really tough this year with COVID, where we're forced to spend a lot more time inside. But for me personally, having removed myself from social media, I actually am not missing out on social media. I'm spending a lot more time using FaceTime or Zoom, where I can have a conversation with my family and my friends and people that are close to me. FaceTime and Zoom are things that we've paid for, right? These are applications that are designed for us. When you get an iPhone, it comes with FaceTime built in, and the ability to have a face-to-face conversation with a family member. There's no middle person. There's no, algorithm in between trying to get you to spend more time on FaceTime talking to your distant cousin that you've never spoken to, right? That's different than how Facebook or Instagram or TikTok are operating and what the incentives are there. I'm bringing this up just as a reminder. This is a phrase that we use in the film. Like, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. And that is, in many ways, it's a simplification, but I find it to be a really, really helpful way to think about it. Like, am I actually the customer here? Or am I the thing being sold to somebody else? And when I removed myself from social media a couple of years ago, this was actually a really helpful thing to keep in mind. I was learning about this thing called the resurrection algorithms. So if you think of a resurrection, like somebody died and then they're coming back to life, this is literally the language that they used at Facebook. If you were a user of Facebook and then you stopped using it, their goal was to resurrect you, to get you to come back to the platform. They considered you dead and they wanted to get you to come back to the platform. And for a period of time, when I stopped using it, I started to see all of these emails that were coming in more frequently. And then the emails weren't working. And then I started getting text messages from Facebook, literally like, so-and-so made a post about this. And then, like, all the little notifications that you get, it was coming in like a fire hose of multiple times a day, regularly throughout the day. There was one of like, here's a girl you had a crush on in high school and she posted a new photo. And I could feel how much they were trying to manipulate me just to get me to come back to Facebook. And that was actually really, really helpful for me to say, you know what, screw this. I'm done with this platform. I'm done with these platforms. I don't want to be used by these systems for their profit. And this is the big concern that was in my mind as well. If you saw the film, we talk about filter bubbles, and we talk about how there are echo chambers, how you can get a limited, more polarized worldview through these platforms, because the platforms are trying to figure out what works on Jack versus what works on Alexa versus what works on Tori. And there's going to be a customized feed for each and every one of you. You see different things on these platforms. And the problem is that the way these algorithms work, it's moving us away from a shared truth, and it's moving us into increased polarization. And this is what has me really, really worried about the world. I think this is something that we're all feeling in different ways with this election coming up in 2020, that it's harder and harder for people on different sides of the aisle to engage in a conversation and to share a conversation. It's harder to just have shared facts and a shared truth, because there are people who are coming to the table with such complete different information than what I'm seeing. And how do you even agree? This was a big part of why we got into this in the first place, because we were finding that people were disagreeing about climate change. And it was like, wait a second, we know what the science on climate change is. Like, this is really, really solid. Yet we were talking to people at film festivals and Q&As with Chasing Ice and Chasing Coral, and they didn't realize that they just were coming to the conversation with misinformation and disinformation that made it impossible to have a conversation about what do we do about climate change. And that was one of the big realizations for me. The way this technology is designed, the way this technology exists right now, it puts all of us into our own filter bubbles. And it's a regardless of any issue that you care about, it's going to find a a crack in society and pushed people into further and further parts. Right. So whatever issue you care about, if it's climate, if it's racial justice, if it's inequality, any of these issues, it's going to find the thing that resonates with you and reinforce that. And on the other side of the algorithm is a different group of people seeing a completely different message. And they are being pushed down a different path than where you are. So this is what has me really, really worried. I actually believe that it is best for your brain to get away from algorithmic feeds. That for your mental health, for your understanding of society, for your ability to engage as a citizen, that you need to get away from these types of feeds that will slowly just drift you into your own little isolated echo chamber. I've been using this analogy. So if you've been studying biology, like you're familiar with Darwinism and Galapagos Island and the studies that Darwin did in Galapagos Island, and you can see that the birds, the finches, over a very quick iteration of generations, they evolved, and the birds were evolving to the point where they became different species than other species. I look at this now as like each of us is on our own Galapagos Island, and all of our Galapagos Islands are drifting farther and farther apart from each other. And the more you interact with it, the faster evolution happens. And so you get more and more information and more news that pushes you in a particular direction. And this is, I'm saying this with all neutrality around any particular ideas, right? Some of the ideas that are on these platforms are very, very good ideas for society. Some of the ideas that are on these platforms are, in my mind, bad for society. But regardless of what particular issue you believe in or care about, each of us is now on our own little Galapagos Island. We're drifting farther and farther apart from each other. And our ideas, now the actual ideas that live in our minds, are becoming incompatible with each other. That we can't actually come back together and have a shared conversation around what should we do as a society. So for the sake of your brains, for the sake of society, for the sake of our government, our electorate, our shared citizenry, I think we need to move away from platforms that are going to give us these customized versions of reality. And we need to come back to a shared reality. I just love the name Look Up Live. Like there's something about how, in many ways, how do we get away from these platforms that have been puppeteering our lives? How do we increase human connection? How do we increase our ability to come together and have difficult conversations? I've been suggesting to people, if there's somebody in your life that you politically disagree with, maybe it's a family member that you see every year at Thanksgiving, and the conversations are getting harder and harder with every passing year. I've been suggesting you do a reality swap. Hey, here's my social media feed. Let me see your social media feed. And let's have a conversation around how nothing is the same on our social media feeds. And maybe that can be a light bulb and a wake up to the fact that, well, wait a second, let's look at the information I'm getting and the information that you're getting, and let's reflect on what is trustworthy. How do we get back to a shared sense of trust? How do we have a conversation that is grounded in some shared starting point? So these are huge, huge challenges, right? This is not an easy solve. Just like with climate change, we have a system that has been in place for many, many years now. And if we snapped our fingers and we stopped burning fossil fuels immediately, we're still going to deal with the consequences of decades of fossil fuel burning. There's inertia in the system. It's going to take a while for us to get back to a stable place. Just with that same analogy, I think that's the case with our social media technology right now. If we snapped our fingers and this stuff disappeared immediately, we still have a decade of misinformation and conspiracy theories that have been implanted in brains all around the country and all around the world. So it's going to take a while for us to heal and to move our society back towards a place where we can have constructive, productive conversations. But in many ways, I think the first step is just having this awareness, being aware and sensitive to why do you believe what you believe? What is shaping your thoughts and views? These platforms have been whispering into each and every one of our ears ideas and thoughts for years and years and years now. And they whisper something into your mind and then it completely disappears the next day. And when you look back and see what you were exposed to over a long period of time, that's where you can see those trends start to show up. I actually did this recently before the Social Dilemma came out. I actually went back and looked at my Facebook history of all the posts that I made. and a lot of the things that I reposted that were suggested to me. And I can look at the mind warp that happened as a result of those algorithms. And those were things I was interested in. I was genuinely interested in those topics or those conversations. But when I step back and see what was happening at scale to me individually, and then you picture that across 2.7 billion people on Facebook alone, right? And you see everybody being pushed into their own little echo chambers. That's where it was really startling to me. I just wanted to close with a couple of thoughts, in that we're in a really unprecedented point in history right now. I think all of you are being like, you're growing up in a time where this is like an unfair world that has been left to you, in terms of our challenges that exist in countless different ways. Our challenges with the environment, our challenges with technology, our challenges with inequality. There are so many different problems all across the board. And it's really easy sometimes to just feel overwhelmed and to say, what the hell do we do? And how do we make a difference? And there's just too much going on. One of my mentors, Jane Goodall, the anthropologist and who studied the chimpanzees in Gombe for many, many years, she likes to say, there's a phrase, think global, act local, but she doesn't like that phrase. She says, think local and act local. And there's something about that that always resonated with me, because when you think about the scale of the world's problems, it's like really impossible to wrap your head around. And it's like, what can I do? It's way too big. This is such a huge challenge. But if you think locally and act locally, it changes the scale. I can think about the problems in my local community. I can think about the problems in my school, or that my family groups or my church groups or whatever group that you're in. Like, those are local issues that you can think about and identify. And how can you use your time and your energy, and maybe even your entire career, right? How can you use your time on this planet to make a positive contribution towards the problems that we're seeing? I look at this as, there's an analogy with nature and our ecosystems and our natural ecosystems that many people tie it back to a bank account, right? And there's a certain amount of resources on the planet, just like there are a certain amount of resources in your bank account. And either you are making more money than you're spending, or you're spending more money than you're making. And either your bank account is going to grow over time, or it's going to shrink to the point of bankruptcy, right? That is, when you look at that as like our system as a whole, whether you're talking about the health of the planet or you're talking about our social fabric and the relationships that we have, either we're actively working to build a better and stronger system, or that system is going to deteriorate and run out. And that's what I'm concerned about from a climate change perspective, is that we are depleting our natural resources to the point where one day we're just going to hit bankruptcy and our systems are going to collapse. And what we need to do is make sure that we are adding and constructing greater positivity into the whole system, to prevent those worst consequences. And I think that's something that I would challenge to each and every one of you. It's like, how can you spend your time at the stage that you're at in life right now, but also in your journey of life through many, many years? And how can you use your time to be a net positive force, to be contributing to whatever issue you care about, whether that's the environment or fill in the blank, right? How can you use your energy to make a difference? And I think that's the biggest hope that I can ask. We can live here on this planet and in this society as passive citizens, not engaged, just letting whatever happens happen, or we can take action. We can get involved in local government. We can get involved in national government. We can get involved in local nonprofits or local issues. Each of you has some sort of superpower. When we were releasing Chasing Ice, everybody kept asking, like, okay, what can I do? What can I do about climate change? And oftentimes I would say, I don't know what you can do. I don't know what your skills are. Are you a storyteller? Are you going into law? Are you a talented writer? Are you great at organizing and managing? What is your superpower, your skill set that you are incredibly talented at? And how do you apply that skill to a positive cause? And that's the beautiful thing. Like, you can be a lawyer and work for really, really great organizations. You can be a writer or an artist. You can use the talents that you have in some positive, constructive way. There's always a way to figure out how to connect those dots. So I think we're switching over to Q&A. But that's the main thrust of what I wanted to share with all of you today. Super excited about this work. Super excited to hear the pitch is coming up in a little bit. I'm thrilled to be here and eager to hear the questions that are coming in.
Thank you, Jeff. That was amazing. We have a couple questions to kick it off, and just want to remind the audience to throw all of your questions in the Q&A. They'll be relayed to me and to Jeff. But first, you've been working in many movements for a while, working for change. What do you think we youth can learn from other youth in other movements as we start on our journey in creating this change?
Yeah. Social change is a marathon and not a sprint. And it is very, very easy to feel overwhelmed and to get burned out and to feel exhausted countless times. And I look back at other social movements and look at the many years it took for countless social rights movements to elevate, and just remind myself that this stuff takes time. Like, there's no immediate solve. We're talking about taking a massive ship that is a country and that is capitalism and that is a society, and we're trying to turn it and re-steer it in a different direction. And those things are going to take time, but everything is going to add up. So I think the biggest thing is to just be comfortable with the pace of change and recognize that sometimes change is slow, but that it all builds up. And the thing that is most exciting is when you get to tipping points. I saw some research at one point around, it was time over, I'm trying to remember what the y-axis was, but it was about how different Supreme Court, like major transformational Supreme Court decisions happened. And it was showing in some cases it took a really long time, and then a certain number of states ratified local laws, and then it plateaued for a long time, then some more states, and then it plateaued, and then it became the law of the land, right? And it was like some of these things took a really long time to hit a tipping point. But the idea of a tipping point is where it can feel like you're charging uphill for an indefinite amount of time, but you need to shift the culture, you need to shift the people, you need to shift the thinking of leadership and of companies and of citizens. And all of that does add up. It all constructively adds to, hopefully we get to a tipping point on the issue, and then you see radical change happen. So it is, I think the biggest advice there is just feeling comfortable, knowing that it is a marathon. These are long efforts in many cases, and that's normal, as much as we want things to happen much faster. and it'd be amazing if we figure out ways to make things happen even faster, but this change takes time.
Yes, it sure does. I like that marathon thought process.
Mm-hmm.
Can you please speak to maybe the irony of using social media for this change, and explain a little bit of your philosophy on how to use social media for this impact, knowing it is such a powerful tool?
Totally. I personally have stopped using social media, as I've mentioned, but we still have a social media presence for the social dilemma, in that we're trying to use that as an educational tool. Some of it is like, you don't need to convince non-smokers of the harms of smoking. You need to talk to smokers of the harms of smoking, right? And so part of the idea for us also is we need to have the conversation on the place that people are on the platforms. So there's a wake up, I think, that we need to have, and it's certainly a really challenging one at times. Just as we were saying, like, it's hard to recognize that you're in the matrix when you're in the matrix. So it's hard to recognize the impacts of social media on society when you're heavily in it. So how do we have enough people outside of the system that can honestly see and reflect and review the system as a whole to be able to make the change that we need? I mean, ultimately, these platforms have become a public square in some ways, without the responsibilities of a public square. They've just become the public square where people have conversation without any of the regulation, rules, et cetera, or laws. But I think the big question is, how do we reflect on what this technology should look like, right? I am super excited for the next generation of technology and the next generation of social media technology that will completely make irrelevant these manipulation platforms that we have right now. And this is going to be a big lift, right? But imagine, and many of you might end up working down this path. Imagine social media that made me feel more connected to my friends and family. Imagine if you went into social media apps and you felt a deeper connection to your friends and family. You felt more informed about the world. You felt better about your life, and you didn't feel social comparison or didn't feel, oh man, jealous of this thing that this other person posted. Like, there's a completely different way that social media could exist. We need to envision that, and we need to build that. And maybe somebody on this call today is going to end up making the next social media platform that we are paying for, that I want to spend $10 a month, just like I do for my Netflix account or my Amazon account or whatever other account. Like, I want to spend money on a platform that deepens my friendships with my close friends and family. That would be amazing.
Totally, yes. And you've been in the world of storytelling to create these movements for a long time. How do you zero in on the right story, the right pitch when communicating to these other people who don't totally understand it? And what are some of the effective words or images that you can use to paint this picture for people?
Right. That's a really, really great question. I tend to think that I'm pretty well informed about the world. I read news on a daily basis. I'm trying to stay on top of like what's going on. And when I start to learn about something that I hadn't heard before, where I feel like a big light bulb is going off, that's where I see a huge opportunity to make a story about that, or to tell that story. Because if I haven't heard it, I'm willing to bet that a bunch of other people haven't heard it as well. That was the case with Chasing Coral in particular, and with The Social Dilemma, where with Chasing Coral, I'd already spent 5+ years working heavily in climate change, and I'd never heard about the story that was happening in the oceans and coral reefs, and that our changing and dying coral reefs was a reflection of climate change. And I was like, wait a second, I'm like really deep in the climate change world and I didn't know about this. So there's something here that I should explore. And putting then time into doing research and exploring that and learning, well, wait a second, there are a lot of things happening in the ocean. There's so many different stories happening in the ocean: ocean acidification, rising temperature, plastics, dynamite fishing. That's actually a thing. People go and they use dynamite to go fishing, and it kills the reefs because it's just a really quick and easy way to catch a bunch of dead fish on the surface of the water. We thought about all these different ways that we could tell that story, but we found the one singular story of corals that were bleaching and turning white and dying was a result of our warming ocean, which was a result of climate change as a whole. And we can connect the dots between burning fossil fuels and the death of the ocean. And that was a story that we wanted to tell. Huge light bulb for me, hopefully huge light bulb for others as well. And that was the same thing with The Social Dilemma. But to the core of your question, there are lots of times where the academic institutions that we are in the traditional schooling that we're in, try to force particular knowledge on us, and it doesn't really inspire self-curiosity and your own personal pursuits and the things that you're interested in and curious about. And I think in many ways, it feels like a shame to me that we have systems that don't necessarily encourage that. But the career path that I've gone down around documentary filmmaking is one where I feel like I get to be a professional student in many ways. All right. When The Social Dilemma started, it was like, wait a second, there's a huge problem going on with our technology. I know nothing about this. I started devouring all the books I could find. I started meeting all of these experts, doing interviews. There was just a license to learn that I had in that process. I'm reading a book right now called Algorithms of Oppression. I wish I'd read this book years ago. Right? Our algorithms are actually perpetuating oppression in our society, something that I hadn't really known about before. And so I get to professionally be a student and learn and explore and figure out how can I sort of feel like every movie is its own little PhD course where I get to like learn and study and dive in deep and pursue something that I know can be a constructive part of society as well. So that's the biggest thing I could encourage to all of you. Like, if there's something that you're passionate about, learn as much as you can. Dive really, really deep. And I would really encourage, don't just learn based on what you see on the internet. Like, go pick up a book, go dive in deep. Like, the amount of time, like, how would you condense a book? This is even a small book compared to many of the books on the subject, right? How do you condense books into tweets? Like, you can't condense ideas into short form. Like, Twitter is not a great place to learn things. And even when it links to an article, it's still just like a short little piece usually, right? The depth and complexity and nuance of thought happens in long form thinking. I actually feel more and more like these social media platforms are a fundamental threat to original thinking, because you're spending all your time just being fed other people's thoughts, and they're really, really short form thoughts, and they don't give you the time or space for real nuance and complexity and expertise. So I can't, for so many reasons, it's like, get off of the platforms, go pick up a book and see where that book leads you to, and find the next book and the next book. And when you become an expert in any subject matter, you can use that with great power, right? Whether you're just wanting to do it for your own education or wanting to help change a system or fight a system, like, it's really that knowledge base is where it all starts. I cannot, like, the thoughts that I've had around this issue have come from moments of quiet reflection, have come in the shower, have come, when we were working on writing the movie. I felt a direct tension between Facebook wanting to pull me in versus the time and need and the pressure to write the script and edit our movie to articulate the thoughts that we were exploring. And I could feel how social media was directly inhibiting my ability to be creative. So, like, find the time, find the mental space, go deep into whatever subject matter you're interested in, and learn and research and study, and then use that to apply to whatever field that you're interested in.
Yes. And you've clearly been a student in both the field of climate change and also the field of the social dilemma. I'm curious, you mentioned the light bulb moment. What was the light bulb moment that led you from your projects more in climate change to digital media now? And are there any particular connections between the topics, and how are you most effectively diving into these?
Right.
Studying them.
Great question, Jack. For me personally, these are all existential threats, right? We are trying to visualize and make accessible to the public huge societal existential threats. And the light bulb for me in kind of the pivot from climate to tech was that, so I'm going to share a couple different thoughts, but there's a frame called surveillance capitalism. And there's a book called The Age of Surveillance Capitalism. And it's a huge book that took me like months and months and months to read. But the author, Shoshana Zuboff, offers this comparison. She said that industrial capitalism, so the institutions of all these corporations that have figured out how to take something out of nature and make money off of it, right? The fossil fuel industry is a perfect example. What industrial capitalism did to nature is what surveillance capitalism is doing to human nature. That we, humanity, we are the raw resource that's being mined and extracted out of the system. And that's like a huge, mind-numbing concept. But the realization for me was that just like what fossil fuels are doing to the planet and putting us on this terrible trajectory, that's what these technology companies are doing to humanity. It was like a real big light bulb for me, that the incentives of these companies and the way that they make money is not in society's interest. It's actually in society's detriment. And if you continue the system, it's like when you look at climate change, and if you say, okay, if we keep burning fossil fuels and putting it into the atmosphere, what does that look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 100 years from now? And you think, wait a second, this is a bad path that we're going on. Like, this is not good for the survival of humanity. And then when you make that same comparison and you look at our technology now has been able to affect billions of people. It touches billions of people around the world. And if you go down this trajectory, what does it look like 5 years, 10 years, 100 years from now? And the realization for me was that these platforms 100 years out from now would be terrible to society, that the way that it's polarizing us is going to get worse and worse and worse. And so that was the realization. I tend to look at things from a systems level perspective, right? And that's really when you can step back and look at the whole system. How do you design the system to be as healthy as possible? That applies to nature, that applies to the human body, that applies to Gaia theory, that applies to our government. And how could we make the changes in our government, for example, so that our government is more sustainable and healthy? There's a frame in the environmental movement around regeneration. What does a regenerative society look like? As opposed to extracting from nature, how do we build and make nature more resilient and stronger? A great example is our soil. Our soil has been so depleted. Our soil can be a carbon sink. It can store carbon from the atmosphere. And really rich, healthy soil can grow things. And really unhealthy, dead soil has a hard time growing things. And how do we convert our topsoil to be healthy and regenerative, right? And with that analogy, how do you apply that to our society as a whole? How do you apply that to a community? How do you apply that to a friend group? How we're adding constructively to each other to make a more resilient and regenerative ecosystem, right? So that's, in my mind, like that systems level approach is one of the best ways to look at our problems and our solutions, because just like that bank account analogy, how do you design it so that your bank account is growing instead of depleting, so you can find that stability? And really, it's just stability that we're looking for, right? In an ideal world, it's growing at the same rate as depleting, so you can live a perfectly happy status quo. Like the goal doesn't need to be infinite growth in the bank account. Like that's also not healthy for the whole system. Yeah.
Yes, brilliant. I think we have time for one more question. So I'd
Great.
love for you to speak to the youth on here right now in just beginning or continuing strong in this marathon to build or start to reform and these systems to be more regenerative, as you mentioned. Any words to these kids?
I think, we cover a whole bunch of it. It's really just a matter of like, there's, people use the phrase like figure out what you're passionate about so that your work isn't actually work. It's stuff that you love to do. And I think I agree with that phrase and that mindset, and that's something that I've been fortunate enough to be able to pursue in my life. But I think what I'm trying to get at is like, how do you want to use your time on this planet? Right? I think that's really what it comes down to. We get a limited amount of time on this planet, and the concept of legacy is one that's like way down the line for you guys, right? I don't think about legacy usually, but when people talk about legacy, they often think about like the work that they left behind or something like there's this notion of like, what have you left behind? But part of it is also, in my mind, just the relationships and the people that you interact with. And it is not just a matter of like, I made this thing and that's going to be my legacy. The legacy is also like the people that you touch in your life and the imprints that you have on others that follow. And I think that's the thing where, how can you use your time to make a positive impact and to help others make a positive impact? Because if you can scale your impact, not just in the work that you do directly, but in the inspiration of others and in the partnership with others and getting other people to get more involved and to take action, that's how radical transformational change can happen, right? I think of it as there's so much inspiration from nature. And if you look at a coral reef or if you look at a tree, there's a fractal system that happens. And the code that's in an individual coral polyp is the same code that's in every single branching coral polyp. And the whole system knows what it needs to do to be a healthy system. And the whole system can branch out infinitely to continue to grow and have that same positive force on the ecosystem in the DNA of every single branch. And how can you implant that DNA in all of your branching relationships, in all of the tendrils and connections and all the fractals of your life, how can you tie that in to be a positive force, such that if that mindset is replicated out, it is constructive to the whole and not destructive to the whole. Like that would be the closing notion that I'd love to leave you all with. Thank you so much, Jack. Those are great questions. Thank you, Susan, Alexa, Tori. Like, this is thrilled to be here, thrilled to share these thoughts.
Thank you. No, thank you, Jeff, so much for the film and for being with us today to send us off.
Yeah, absolutely.
We greatly appreciate it. I'd like to now introduce a fellow teen council member and LookUp, Tori, who's going to lead us into the action sprints.
Yes, thank you, Jack. So I'm here to introduce our 90-90 action sprints. So these are pitches made by all youth and innovators in order to help other youth come together from around the world to meet and collaborate on their shared visions. So each of them have put together a 90-second clip of their pitch, which will be shown in a video in a minute or two. And I encourage you all, afterwards, we're going to have meeting rooms that I will show you how to access, that you can go and talk to them. And these pitches are really awesome opportunities, because it can seem daunting to have some kind of a change in your life be a forever. But if you commit to doing something just for 90 days, that can make a really big impact in your life or in others. So these are really awesome pitches from a lot of really different and really awesome groups. So there will be a video that is shared, and then afterwards I'll show you how to get to those individualized meeting rooms where you'll get a chance to meet and collaborate with these awesome people. So just to clarify, this is just for youths only, and then adults, you have a separate panel that's also available.
One minute, we just are having technical difficulty.
No problem.
Good chance for everybody to breathe in and out. Join your hosts. No sound.
Oh, got it.
Sometimes it seems like people are so invested in what's happening in virtual spaces that they're missing out on all of the opportunities available, sans screens. What if we made the choice to change our relationship with devices? What if we unplugged to reconnect? This is a two-step action aimed to inspire and empower anyone to turn off their devices in order to reconnect with the real, not digital world. Let's go more in depth. Unplugging means making the intentional decision to put your screens down. Phones, tablets, computers, TVs, goodbye to anything that emits blue light. This can be whenever, wherever, and for however long you want. Once you've made the leap and unplugged, it's time to reconnect. With what, you might ask? Here are a few thoughts. Reconnect with other people, friends, family, people you pass by on a daily basis but don't interact with because you have earbuds in or are texting. Plan a socially distanced gathering where everyone commits to keeping their phones away. Reconnect with the world around you, nature, your town, the spaces that are so easy to forget about when you're binge watching in your bedroom. Go for a walk or run without your phone. Reconnect with your passions. Rediscover interests that may have taken a back burner when you got Snapchat or Instagram. This could be something as simple as reading a paper book. And lastly, reconnect with yourself. When's the last time you stepped away from your screens to introspect, asking yourself, how am I doing right now? And taking time to ponder the good, the bad, and the in-between. By unplugging to reconnect, we can spark a movement that leads towards a human, not screen-focused world. Join me in the Unplug to Reconnect action group, and we can plan how to spread this message and practice to youth around the world. Together, we can unplug to reconnect.
Let's say you build an app which can trace the spread of COVID-19. A contact tracing app which needs a ton of permissions, including constant location access and Bluetooth. The amount of time the user would take to lose trust in it. Sounds familiar? The tech industry has a long history of data abuses, and we've felt deceived by these companies who have tried to use the technical details to hide their capabilities. We, as developers, are required to keep up engagement rates on our apps to drive more profit. We need to put in all sorts of attention-grabbing facets to ensure that the user almost has to consider twice before leaving the window. Not anymore. In the next 90 days, I propose to come up with 49 techniques to make our applications more ethical. For instance, how do you not chase user engagement yet manage to keep up profit margins? How do you ensure the data you collect is safe for users to trust you? How can your team innovate while integrating ethical principles from the early stages of a new project? What criteria should you adopt to protect the user without hampering the innovative process? That's a lot of questions, difficult ones, but with your support, I'm confident we'll figure it out. Join me on buildethical.tech, where we'll engage in doing tech the right way, the way which ensures that all of us get to survive this digital revolution. Remember, 90 days, 49 techniques, beginning today.
We are the Live More Youth Council.
And we're here to talk to you about something you use every day. Social media.
Social media platforms can be an awesome way to connect with friends and family.
It can also be a distraction from work, create false realities, and affect our mental health.
Sometimes we don't realize the negative effects of using our social media.
I want to feel good, connected, motivated, and inspired after using social media. But how do I do that?
Our pitch is at the end of every week for 12 weeks. Reflect on your social media usage and how it has affected your mental health that week.
This will allow you to take time away from your screen and to think about how your social media makes you feel.
One way you can keep track of your usage is by using screen time for Apple users, or digital well-being for Android users. And then record your hours in your journal while reflecting on if there is a connection between your screen usage and your mental health that week.
Ask yourself, is there a trend that you see occurring every week?
After your reflection, write down some ways you can alter your time spent on your phone for the next week and see what benefits you the most.
As screenagers ourselves, we understand the difficulty of following a routine when you're busy all the time.
So don't worry if you happen to miss a week. Just acknowledge it, accept it, and try again the next week.
We're all in this together. 90 days starts now.
Join us in the Action Sprint meeting room to get involved with this movement.
Do you feel frustrated, overwhelmed, or just exhausted from the tech-centered world that we live in? Do you feel confused or upset with all this mental health talk but not enough corresponding action? Do you feel like you have something to say when it comes to mental health and digital wellness, but the only thing that's holding you back is your following? Do you feel like your voice needs to be heard in this mental health space, but you might be too scared to enter it? If the answer is yes to any of these questions, stop what you're doing for the next 60 seconds. What if I told you that your voice is the voice that's missing? That your perspective, your angle, is what we need. That you can have an influence regardless of whether you have 20 followers or 20,000. LookUp is partnering with Ariana Huffington's Thrive Global to help give you the money and the resources to be able to do this. I'm a junior at USC studying journalism and the business of entertainment industry. I knew that whatever we were doing about mental health and wellness wasn't enough. So I used my voice to contribute to that conversation. I have people reaching out to me every day telling me how my column, how my work in this space has impacted them. And that to me means I'm doing the work right. Was it scary? Yes. Was I unsure of myself and doubting myself? Absolutely. But has it been worth it? Absolutely. I encourage you to take the risk, take the leap, and do the same. Start writing, start talking to your friends, start the podcast you always wanted to start, and LookUp is here to help you do that.
Hi, my name is Emma Lemke, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Log Off.
Hi, my name is Hannah Ashcraft, and I'm the Director of Outreach and Communications.
Today, we are responding to LookUp Live's call to action with our 90-day plan.
First, we have to address what the problem is. Statistically, social media has a huge negative impact on teenage mental health, including increases in online harassment, depression, anxiety, and stress levels.
We have two main sources of inspiration. First was Tristan Harris's comments at the Wisdom 2.0 Q&A. He mentioned that all it took were 7 people to tell 7 other people in order to push a movement forward. And we think that that conversation between friends and family is what is going to help solve this issue.
The Jubilee Spectrum film series is a series on YouTube which takes different people from different demographics to discuss their alignment on a chart from disagree to agree, and then for different topics, and they come together to discuss their viewpoints.
Our solution is just a 90-day conversation initiative. We understand the power of words like Tristan Harris, and we want to continue with that idea in order to help spread consciousness about social media's impact on teenage mental health. First, we want to get people to get a group of friends or family together to engage in these spectrum-type talks. But in order to do that, we need to create conversation guides.
We need your voice and input on some thought-provoking questions to put on these conversation guides. Sign up to join our team and help us create conversation, spark change, and make an impact.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, for those of you who are unfamiliar with Whova, here's a quick walkthrough on how to get to the Action Group meetup rooms. Simply go to the Community tab, find the Meetups and Virtual Meets section, and then you can join any of the action groups that appeal to you.
Hey, were you really inspired by the documentary The Social Dilemma, but you're like, I don't know what I should do, where I should go, how can I help? I know exactly where you can start. Head to your browser, type in lookup.live, and click donate. It's really that easy. And then at this box right here, you can just type in the amount that you're comfortable with. It can be $20, $5, and then you'll be able to say, hey, I'm doing something. And you'll be supporting an org that listens to your voice. So donate!
Awesome. So those were our action pitches. We are going to, after you saw the instructions, but I can reiterate it again. You'll go to the community page on Whova, and then it will say meetups and virtual meets. And under that, you can join any of those action pitches discussions in order to come up with and join their solutions, their 90/90 pitches. Yeah, awesome. I hope to see lots of you in those groups, and I hope you have an awesome rest of your day. And if there are any other adults on this call still, those meeting rooms are specifically reserved for youths, but there is an Adult Allies for Youth Advocate panel going on right now.
Thanks, everyone.